We are so glad that you've joined us. Hey, today you are going to hear some worship. You're going to hear from one of our pastors as they share a quick devotional thought. But a few things that we want you to know over the next couple of weeks. First is that from December 21st, so starting today, all the way through January 1st, we're going to play some of the best of the last year of Compass Daily. So you're going to hear some incredible worship and some of the best talks that we've heard from some of our pastors and directors over the last year. And it's going to be incredible. Two things that I want to remind you of. Coming up just in a few hours even is our Christmas services here at Compass Christian Church. And we would love for you to be a part of them. You can go to christmas@compass.com to know more about those times, the locations, and anywhere and any way that you can join us to be a part of a Christmas Eve experience here at Compass. And then one last thing before we step into a time of worship. We want to remind you that on December 27th, that's the Sunday following Christmas, our heart is that you would be spending time with your family at home. And so what we have done is we're not asking you to come to church in person. We've created a special online experience for you, and you're going to hear an incredible message from our teaching team called Defining Moments. It's going to be awesome. Same message across every campus, but December 27th, online only, and we hope that you'll join us and watch with your family. Now join with us as we step into a time of worship.
I will sing of your goodness. I will sing of your love. Though the seasons come quickly, you have always been enough. Though the night may get dark, though the waiting seems long, you have always been faithful to remind me of your love. You are good. In the morning I'll sing you are good. In the evening I'll sing you are good. You are good to me. Yes, you are. You have always been patient. You have always been kind. You're consistent through the ages. Oh, what a friend of mine. So I'll remind my soul to bless you, standing firm upon your truth, knowing you cannot be shaken, 'cause I've seen what you can do. Oh, you are good. In the morning I'll sing you are good. And in the evening I'll sing you are good. You are good to me. We believe you're good, yes. Oh, you are good. In the morning I'll sing you are good. In the evening I'll sing you are good. You are good to me. You keep on getting better. 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 Yeah. You keep on getting better. 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 Yeah.
Well, thanks, Rob and Maddie, for a great start to our morning. You know, I don't know about you, but I love starting my day with worship. Well, welcome to Compass Daily. So glad that you're joining us today, wherever you might be watching this from or whenever you might be watching this. You know, I hope you'll make it a priority to tune in this week over these next 5 days, because we're going to dig into 5 spiritual disciplines that are important in our life and especially in our walk with God. And it's our hope that you'll apply these things to your own spiritual walk, because these things can make a huge difference for you if you will simply just apply them. Well, let me tell you a story as we begin today. Back in January of 1999, the North Atlantic commercial fishing industry saw a deadly string of accidents. In fact, in 13 days span, 3 ships, the Cape Fear, the Adriatic, and the Betsy Bob, were lost at sea off the coast of New Jersey. In all, 10 men died and 5 were never found. Now, I don't know what you know about commercial fishing. Maybe someone tuning in today is a huge fan of The Deadliest Catch, or who knows, maybe someone watching this today does this for a living. But no matter what your knowledge is of commercial fishing, I think it's important to understand that it's a dangerous profession to make a living by. That maybe you've already figured that out just based on what I've already told you today. But even despite the hazards of this job, the fact that these 3 ships were all lost in such a short period of time is extremely rare. And even more so because these ships were all from the same docks. After these tragedies occurred, the investigations were done of the 3 ships, and what they found is that in all 3 cases, the investigators found 3 things that were the same about all of them. The first thing was this: none of the hulls had been breached. The second thing was that all 3 ships were piloted by veteran captains who had at least 10 years of experience, so it wasn't due to a lack of experience. And the third thing was this: all 3 ships were almost at the end of their journey. In fact, all 3 ships were less than 15 miles from home. So what happened? Like what caused these crashes? After the investigations were complete, what they found is that 2 of the 3 ships were carrying too much weight, and one of them was carrying its weight improperly. You see, in the northern Atlantic in January, vessels like the Adriatic and the Cape Fear and the Betsy Bob, these are clam boats. The way you catch clams in a clam trap, which is a 3-foot by 3-foot by 4-foot mechanism, and it weighs about 300 pounds empty. But once filled with clams, the weight rises to 1 to 1.5 tons apiece. And you see, what investigators found is that although the Cape Fear and the Adriatic were doing what they should have been, they weren't doing some of the things they should have been. They had 10 extra traps on board their ships, which equals about 10 to 15 tons of extra weight. And these boats really shouldn't have been carrying this. And therein lies the problem. But you see, when the captains of these boats were asked about why they carried so much extra weight on board their ships, the captains actually were a little bit confused. Because despite what the boat paper said, this was actually common practice. Like every captain carried more than they should. They didn't perceive it as being dangerous. It was just normal. But despite what was commonplace and considered normal, this practice of carrying too much of a load ended up costing other people their lives. And unfortunately, just like these captains allowed too much weight to be brought on board, if we're not careful, the same thing can happen in our own life. That's what I want to talk to you about today. The importance of practicing and taking a Sabbath each week. Now, if you grew up in the church, then when you hear the word Sabbath, maybe you were taught that meant Sunday or going to church. Or maybe when you think of the 10 commandments that God gave to Moses and the Israelite people, you think about what it says in Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. But today, I want us to think past this word Sabbath as just a day of the week. Today, I want us to focus on the importance of Sabbath in our own spiritual walk. You see, the word Sabbath actually comes from the Hebrew word for Shabbat, which really means to cease working or to rest. I don't know about you, but honestly, I'm not always good at doing this. I'm not good at resting. I'm not good at stopping to slow down and take time for myself. And over the past few months, honestly, I really haven't taken as many Sabbaths as I probably should have. And so I guess today is as much for me and a reminder for me of just how important incorporating a Sabbath into my week is as it is for you. Because the fact is this: we all need rest. You can go back to the very beginning of time, and we read in Genesis 1, God creates everything for 6 straight days. But when day 6 is up, this is when it says this in Genesis 2, verses 2 and 3. It says, by the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the 7th day and he made it holy because on it, he rested from all the work of creating all that he had done. Now, I want you to notice a few things in these verses here. It says, by the seventh day, that God had finished all his work, so he rested. God Sabbaths on the seventh day, not because he was tired, but instead because he was satisfied with what he'd done. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes the reason I don't rest is because, unlike God, I'm not satisfied with what I've done, or maybe I don't feel like I've satisfied what I should have done, so I keep on going like the Energizer Bunny, except I just don't have the energy. You know, the problem is, like the captains of the Cape Fear and the Adriatic, I think what happens is that we can ignore the paperwork for our souls that God has given us in Scripture. That rather than finding time to push pause and rest, we just keep weighing ourselves down with more and more stuff and filling our calendars and filling our time because we think that's what we're supposed to do. And look, it might not seem like a big deal at first, but over time, what can happen is that the weight of the work without rest can lead to a collapse. You know, when you look at the list of the things on the 10 Commandments, you see things like don't lie, and maybe you're like me and you're like, yep, I understand that. Or don't envy or lust or steal or don't murder. And you're probably like, yo, I get why those are on the list. I mean, those could lead you down a bad path, right? But maybe you've never thought of the sixth commandment, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy like this. And you're thinking, you know what? This one seems a little bit out of place next to murder and stealing and lying. But there's a reason why God gives us this commandment and why Sabbath is so important. You know, maybe you've done this when somebody you haven't seen in a while asks you how you're doing. And maybe you respond by saying something like this, man, I am so busy right now, but it's a good busy. Have you ever said something like this? I'll admit, I know that I've said that to some friends over these past few months. Maybe right now you could admit that as well, so I don't feel as alone. In fact, what I want you to do right now is if that's you, if you've said those things, just go ahead and give us a wave in the comment section right now. I'll wait for you. All right, I see those hands. Thanks for not making me feel alone in this. Here's the problem, though, with this. When we allow ourselves to stay busy, we fail to follow the command that God gives us to carve out the time that we need for rest. And maybe you've never thought about it this way, but failing to follow the command would be like saying things like this. You know what? Lying is okay. You know, fudging the numbers on the spreadsheet, that's really not a big deal. Or even worse, you know what? Coveting my neighbor's wife, it's not a big deal at all. I mean, let's face it, we would never say something like that, would we? We know we shouldn't do those things, but this whole idea of Sabbath, to cease working, to rest, our mindset is more like this. You know what? I don't need rest. This isn't a big deal. But you see, that is where this mindset gets us in trouble. We all need rest. There's a reason that God commands it. And honestly, if we don't follow this command, there can be some dire consequences. God commands work for 6 days. The seventh day, he says, is a day that is marked for rest. And here's why we need Sabbath. Taking time to Sabbath each week reminds us that we need him and that we cannot do this on our own. You see, I think when we ignore this command to Sabbath, what we are saying is, we're saying this to God, God, I don't need your help. I've got this. I can do this on my own. And ultimately what we're saying is, God, I am too important to step away and follow your command. And this is dangerous. The theologian Augustine, he once said this, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. You know, I don't know about you, but in my own life, I find myself restless when I fail to follow this command to Sabbath. You know, several years ago, a friend of mine who's a pastor, he challenged me to make sure that I was making a Sabbath a regular rhythm in my life, to take time to unplug, to spend time focusing on God and his goodness and taking time to rest. And for me, that day became Fridays because, let's face it, Sundays are not the best day of the week for me. Maybe Sundays aren't the best day of the week for you either to Sabbath, but it's important that we find a day to rest, to cease to work. And so on Fridays, I try not to answer emails. I don't always succeed at it. On Fridays, I don't answer my phone for church-related things. I only answer for my family. And on Fridays, I really do try to take time to rest. Now, that looks different from week to week. Sometimes it's just sitting on the back patio reading a book or watching a movie or TV. Sometimes it's spending the day exploring new areas of our city with my wife Amanda, or antiquing. For you, that might be golfing or fishing or hiking or just exploring nature. For each of us, it looks different. But the important thing is to get away from the regular routine of the other 6 days and find the time necessary to rest as God commands. And here's what I want to challenge you to do today. I want you to check your paperwork. Ask yourself, am I carrying too much weight? Have I allowed things to get out of balance in my life? And have I failed to follow God's command to Sabbath? If things are out of balance in your life right now, it's time for you to change the center of gravity. If right now you're feeling restless, if you're going through a storm and you feel like you're at a tipping point, then my guess is that you haven't taken the time to rest in God and his goodness, that you haven't chosen the Sabbath. Now back to those 3 ships, the Cape Fear, the Adriatic, and the Beth Bob. All 3 ships, they faced storms as they came back towards land, but you have to understand, these weren't perfect storm type storms that they encountered. These were the kind of storms that they would have faced on a regular basis when out to sea. For the Cape Fear and the Adriatic, the problem, we know, I already said it, was they had too much weight. For the Beth Bob, it was within the weight limits. The problem was the weight on the boat was unevenly distributed. The boat was too top heavy. There wasn't enough weight below deck. And you see, it's what's below the waterline that matters. It's what's inside those invisible places that makes the difference between staying afloat or capsizing. And the same is true for us. If we take on too much on the outside, we might look fine. But on the inside, if we've taken a good look at our paperwork, things can be so out of balance that when the storms come, we won't be ready to handle them. You see, God knew this, and that's why he called us to rest in him. It's why we need the Sabbath each week, because if we don't, what we have to understand is that it may not be the first storm that takes us out, but it's only a matter of time until one does. So here's my challenge for you this week. Check your paperwork. Are you out of balance? If so, make sure that you take some time to put in permanent ink a Sabbath into your schedule, because you need it. You can't do this thing called life without rest.
Hey, thank you guys for joining us today on Compass Daily. We want to see you in person at the start of the new year. If you want to find out about the times and locations and the ways that you can join and be a part of the Compass family, you can go to compass.church, and we will see you next time on Compass Daily.